My name is Carlton Walker, and at 70 years old, I never thought my own son would break my finger over money. It happened 3 months ago when I refused to co-sign a $250,000 loan for his wife's boutique business. The sharp crack of bone still echoes in my mind, along with the look in his eyes. Cold, calculated, like I was nothing but an obstacle. Before I tell you how this broke more than just my bone, if you're watching this from your home or phone, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment about whether you'd ever co-sign a loan for family. Banking was my life for 42 years. I started as a teller at First National and retired as a senior risk assessment officer. Numbers never lied to me. People often did, but spreadsheets and financial statements always revealed the truth if you knew how to read them. My wife Margaret used to tease me about my trust issues with loan applications, but respected how I protected our family finances. She was the heart of our home until cancer took her 4 years ago, leaving just me and our only son Adrian to carry on without her steady presence. Adrian came into our world when Margaret and I had almost given up hope of having children. He was our miracle baby, born when we were both approaching 40. Perhaps that's where things began to go sideways. We cherished him so completely, determined to give him everything we never had. The best schools, summer camps, sports equipment, music lessons. Nothing was too good for our boy. Looking back now, I can see how that abundance without sufficient boundaries created problems. When Adrian's baseball coach benched him for missing practice, I complained to the league. When he received a C on a high school paper, Margaret requested a meeting with the teacher. We didn't intend to spoil him, but our love manifested as protection from consequences rather than preparation for life's realities. By the time Adrian entered college at 18, the pattern was set. He expected the best and the easiest path forward. His business degree from State University came courtesy of our savings, not his effort. He maintained just enough grade point average to avoid academic probation while spending most of his energy on fraternity life and networking. Connections matter more than grades, Dad, he would explain when I expressed concern about his academic performance. Nobody in the business world cares if you got an A in marketing theory. During his senior year, Adrian brought home Sophia Barnes for Thanksgiving dinner. She was stunning, sophisticated, and clearly ambitious. Margaret was instantly charmed by her polite manners and fashion sense. I noticed something else: the designer watch, the subtle comments about her family's vacation home, the way she assessed our house with a quick, calculating glance. She comes from good people, Adrian informed us proudly. Her father runs his own investment firm. What Adrian didn't know, but I discovered through industry connections months later, was that Thomas Barnes' firm had been under SEC investigation twice and narrowly avoided charges both times. Appearances mattered more than financial stability in Sophia's family, a value system that would influence Adrian deeply in the years to come. Their wedding, a year after graduation, was a lavish affair. Margaret and I contributed $60,000, nearly wiping out what remained of Adrian's college fund. Sophia's family handled the reception, which featured ice sculptures, a 10-piece orchestra, and party favors that cost more than my first car. The spectacle made me uneasy, but Margaret insisted we support their beginning as generously as possible. "This is what young people do these days," she assured me. Times have changed since our courthouse ceremony. The early years of their marriage established a troubling pattern. Adrian would call every few months with a financial emergency. Car repairs, unexpected tax bills, security deposits for increasingly expensive apartments. Each time, Margaret and I would help, receiving profuse thanks that gradually became briefer and more entitled. "We're just in a temporary cash flow situation," Adrian would explain. "Once my commission structure changes next quarter, we'll be fine." But the next quarter would bring a different job, a different excuse, and the same request for funds. I watched their social media showcasing exotic vacations and expensive restaurants, while my bank account transferred more money to cover their basic needs. Margaret insisted that family helped family, though I noticed her growing discomfort with each request. When Margaret was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Adrian and Sophia visited regularly during the first month. As treatments intensified and Margaret's appearance changed, their visits became less frequent. Adrian would call instead, his conversations growing shorter. When Margaret passed away, Adrian stood stoically at the funeral, accepting condolences beside me while checking his phone between handshakes. Retirement became a lonely affair without Margaret. I filled my days with volunteer work at the local financial literacy center, teaching budgeting classes to young adults. Adrian and Sophia now lived across town in an upscale neighborhood, but I saw them only on major holidays or when financial difficulties arose. The calls for assistance continued with increasing amounts and decreasing gratitude. A year ago, I finally established firm boundaries after consulting with my therapist. I called Adrian and clearly communicated that while I loved him unconditionally, my financial support would now be limited to birthday and Christmas gifts. I offered to help review their budget or provide financial counseling instead. The conversation ended with Adrian's cold silence and a text message the next day, "Thanks for nothing." For months afterward, I barely heard from him except for a brief Christmas visit where he and Sophia spent most of the time talking to each other rather than engaging with me. Then, about 4 months ago, something changed. Adrian began calling weekly, asking about my health, even inviting me to dinner at their home twice. I wanted to believe it represented genuine reconciliation, but something in my banker's instinct sent warning signals. Their sudden attentiveness felt like the carefully crafted courtesy of a loan applicant rather than sincere family connection. Still, hope is a powerful force, especially for a widower with only one child. I allowed myself to believe that perhaps Adrian had matured, that our relationship might enter a new, more balanced phase. That hope would soon cost me more than I could have imagined. The knock on my door came at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in May. Through the window, I spotted a gleaming black Tesla parked in my driveway. Adrian and Sophia stood on my porch holding a gift basket and a bottle of wine, both dressed casually but expensively. Adrian's smile seemed wider than usual, Sophia's embrace a touch more enthusiastic. "Dad, you look great," Adrian announced as they entered. "Have you been working out?" I hadn't, and he knew it. My arthritis had actually been flaring up considerably, something I'd mentioned during our last phone call. They bustled into my kitchen, Sophia immediately taking charge of unwrapping what turned out to be a $150 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. "We need to celebrate," she proclaimed, searching through my cabinets for proper wine glasses. "Celebrate what?" I asked, watching Adrian arranging elaborate cheese and crackers from the gift basket onto my everyday plates. "Life, opportunity, family," he replied vaguely, exchanging a meaningful glance with Sophia. Over the next hour, they maintained light conversation, asking about my garden, my volunteer work, even my opinions on current events. Adrian refilled my wine glass twice, while barely touching his own. After serving a dessert they'd brought, they finally settled onto the couch across from my recliner. "Dad, we've been doing a lot of thinking about the future," Adrian began, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his business voice. "About building something meaningful." Sophia reached for a sleek leather portfolio from her designer tote bag. "We wanted you to be the first to see this. We've been working on it for months." Inside the portfolio were professional marketing materials for Luxe and Luster, an upscale clothing boutique featuring curated designer collections. The business plan included glossy mock-ups of store layouts, financial projections, and marketing strategies. "The location is perfect," Sophia explained, showing me photos of a retail space in the city's most exclusive shopping district. "It just became available last week, and we need to move quickly before someone else grabs it." Adrian leaned forward, his expression earnest. "We've done all the groundwork. Supplier relationships, marketing strategy, staffing plan. Sophia has an incredible eye for fashion trends, and my business background means we understand the financial side." They continued their presentation for another 20 minutes, tag-teaming with practiced precision. Finally, Adrian reached the point. "The startup costs are $250,000. We qualify for the loan, but the bank wants a cosigner because of the current economic climate. Sophia reached over to touch my hand. We wouldn't ask if we weren't absolutely certain this will succeed. The projections show break-even in 18 months, and then significant profit after that. We thought of you immediately, Adrian added. With your banking background, you understand what a solid opportunity this is. The practiced nature of their presentation set off alarm bells in my mind. I'd seen thousands of loan applications in my career and recognized when someone was overselling their case. I asked several basic questions about their business model, market analysis, and contingency planning. Sophia answered with rehearsed enthusiasm, while Adrian grew increasingly impatient with my inquiries. "Dad, this isn't a bank loan committee," he finally interrupted. "This is family helping family. We need the papers signed by Wednesday for the property deposit." "I'd like to review the actual loan documents first," I replied calmly. "And perhaps look over your current financial situation to make sure this won't overextend you." Adrian's jaw tightened, but Sophia quickly intervened. "Of course, Carlton. We want you to feel comfortable with everything." She pulled out a folder containing loan documents. "We can come back Tuesday. Will that give you enough time?" After they left, I spread the documents across my dining room table and began a thorough review. My concerns deepened with each page. The interest rate was significantly above market, with punitive default clauses and an accelerated repayment schedule after the first year. The fine print revealed that my liability as cosigner would extend beyond the initial loan to any future credit extended under the business name. I called Franklin Morris, my former colleague who still worked at the bank, and described the terms without mentioning my son's involvement. "Sounds predatory," Franklin said bluntly. "We'd never offer terms like that to qualified borrowers. This is the kind of package we'd see from third-tier lenders targeting desperate or naive applicants." That evening, I did something I'd promised myself I wouldn't. I searched online for information about Adrian and Sophia's current financial status. Through public records, I discovered they had a second mortgage on their home, taken out 6 months earlier, 2 car loans, and a tax lien from the previous year. More concerning, I found court records for a business called Style Sanctuary that Sophia had apparently started and abandoned 3 years ago, leaving several vendors with unpaid invoices. By Monday afternoon, I'd compiled a complete picture that showed my son and daughter-in-law were already carrying over $120,000 in high-interest debt. Adding $250,000 more would be financially devastating, especially with a business model that showed little understanding of current retail challenges. I spent Monday night preparing for their visit. I created a simplified analysis of their debt load and cash flow situation. I drafted alternative suggestions: a smaller loan to test their business concept, some business development courses at the community college, potential investors who might be interested in fashion startups. I even prepared a list of more reputable lenders who might offer better terms if they improved their credit scores. Despite knowing how they would likely react, I held on to a thin hope that Adrian might recognize I was trying to help, not hinder, that he might see I was acting out of love and experience, not control or spite. That hope lasted until their Tesla pulled into my driveway Tuesday afternoon. Adrian and Sophia arrived precisely at 4. No gift basket or wine this time. Their pleasantries were perfunctory, clearly impatient to get to business. Sophia's eyes darted repeatedly to the folder on my coffee table as we exchanged brief updates on our respective weeks. "So," Adrian finally said, clapping his hands together, "did you look everything over?" "I did," I replied, trying to keep my tone gentle but firm. I spent considerable time reviewing all the documents and looking into the broader picture. I began explaining my concerns about the loan terms first, pointing out the excessive interest rate and punitive clauses. Sophia's smile froze in place while Adrian's began to fade. When I moved to the topic of their current debt load, Sophia's eyes widened. "You investigated our finances?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "That's a complete invasion of privacy." "I checked public records," I clarified. "As a potential cosigner, I need to understand the full financial picture." Adrian stood abruptly. This is unbelievable. We came to you for help, not a financial audit. I remained seated, gesturing to the papers I had prepared. I am trying to help. These are some alternative approaches that could work better for everyone. Sophia didn't even glance at them. Her eyes welled with tears, a reaction I had seen her deploy strategically in family discussions before. I knew this would happen. You've never believed in me, never accepted me into the family. Margaret would have supported us without all these questions and accusations. The mention of my late wife sent a spike of anger through me, but I kept my voice level. Margaret would have had the same concerns. She trusted my financial judgment completely. Adrian paced the living room, his face reddening. Always the same story with you, Dad. You never think I'm good enough, smart enough. You've been waiting for me to fail my entire life, so you can say, I told you so. That's not true, Adrian. I want you to succeed. That's why I'm suggesting a more sustainable approach. Like what? He sneered. Community college classes? A tiny loan that can't buy decent inventory? You don't want us to succeed. You want us under your thumb, dependent on your approval. I took a deep breath. You've received over $70,000 in gifts from me over the past 5 years. I've never asked for anything in return except basic financial responsibility. Gifts? Sophia laughed bitterly. Is that what you call helping your only son? Most parents would do anything to support their children's dreams. I'm trying to prevent a nightmare, not kill a dream, I responded. This business could succeed with proper planning and scale, but not with this debt structure. The conversation continued to deteriorate. Every suggestion I offered was met with increasing hostility. Sophia brought up perceived slights from years earlier, while Adrian resurrected childhood grievances I barely remembered. Their accusations grew more outlandish until Sophia finally stood up. I can't listen to this anymore, she declared, grabbing her purse. I'll wait in the car. Either he signs, or we leave and figure it out ourselves. She stormed out, leaving Adrian and me in tense silence. His expression had transformed from anger to something colder, more calculated. He moved toward the coffee table, where the original loan documents lay beside my alternative suggestions. I need those papers, Dad, he said quietly. I can't sign them, son. I would be doing you a disservice. He stepped closer, towering over me as I remained seated. You don't understand. We've already paid the deposit. If this falls through, we lose everything. Then that was a premature decision, I replied, standing to level our positions. You should have secured financing first. His face contorted with frustration. Just sign the damn papers. He lunged forward, grabbing for the loan documents. Instinctively, I reached to protect the papers, not wanting them taken before we'd reached a resolution. Our hands collided over the coffee table, and Adrian seized my wrist. What happened next wasn't an accident or a momentary loss of control. He looked directly into my eyes as he twisted my hand backward, applying deliberate pressure. The snap was audible, a sharp crack followed by explosive pain shooting from my index finger up through my arm. The world went white for a moment as nausea flooded through me. Adrian released my hand, and I cradled it against my chest, staring at my finger, already swelling, and bent at an unnatural angle. The pain was breathtaking, but the shock of what had just occurred was even more stunning. My son had intentionally broken my finger. Adrian's expression flickered between horror and determination, as though even he couldn't quite believe what he'd done. Then his features hardened. You'll sign these one way or another, Dad, he said, snatching up the loan papers. I'll be back tomorrow, and I expect your signature. Think about what's important here. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in my living room, cradling my injured hand. Tears welled in my eyes from both physical pain and the soul-crushing realization that my son had just assaulted me for money. I bit them back, sitting in silence for several minutes, trying to process what had happened. Eventually, the throbbing became impossible to ignore. I awkwardly fumbled for my phone with my left hand, struggling to dial my neighbor's number for a ride to the emergency room. As I waited, I looked at the alternative proposal I'd created, now scattered across the floor. All that work, all that care, dismissed without consideration. just like me. The emergency room was predictably busy for a Tuesday evening. I sat in the hard plastic chair for over an hour, my hand elevated on a makeshift pillow of my folded jacket. The triage nurse had given me ice and basic pain medication, but it barely took the edge off. Every heartbeat sent a fresh pulse of pain through my injured finger. "Mr. Walker?" The doctor was a young woman with kind eyes and an efficient manner. "I'm Dr. Kaminsky. Let's take a look at that hand." She gently examined my swollen finger, apologizing when I winced. "We'll need X-rays to confirm, but this appears to be a clean break of the proximal phalanx." "How did this happen?" I hesitated. I got my hand caught. "Caught in what?" she asked, making notes on her tablet. "A door," I lied, unable to speak the truth aloud. Despite everything, some paternal instinct still protected Adrian. Dr. Kaminsky looked up, her expression skeptical. "This injury is consistent with a twisting force, not a crushing one typically seen in door injuries." "It was complicated," I mumbled, looking away. She paused, then set down her tablet. "Mr. Walker, I'm required to ask, did someone else cause this injury to you?" The directness of her question caught me off guard. For a moment, I considered telling her everything. Instead, I shook my head. "No, just my own clumsiness." She didn't appear convinced, but didn't press further. The X-rays confirmed a clean break requiring a splint rather than a cast. As she worked on my hand, Dr. Kaminsky mentioned resources for elder abuse victims. I thanked her politely, while insisting the information wasn't relevant to my situation. My neighbor Dave drove me home around 9 o'clock. He offered to come inside, perhaps noticing my unusually subdued demeanor, but I assured him I could manage. Once alone, I took the prescription pain medication and sank into my recliner, physically and emotionally exhausted. The house phone rang repeatedly throughout the evening. I checked the caller ID: my sister Rachel, my niece Jennifer, Adrian's cousin Thomas. I let them all go to voicemail, lacking the energy to speak with anyone. When I finally checked the messages before bed, I discovered Adrian had been busy. "Carlton, it's Rachel. Just heard about your fall from Adrian. Do you need anything? Call me tomorrow." "Uncle Carlton, it's Jennifer. So sorry to hear you fell and hurt your hand. Adrian said you were pretty shaken up. Let me know if you need meals dropped off." The story continued through 4 more messages. According to Adrian, I had taken a bad fall in the bathroom and was too proud to ask for help. The fabricated tale spread through our family network with remarkable speed, positioning Adrian as the concerned son dealing with his stubborn elderly father. I took 2 pain pills and went to bed, struggling to perform simple nighttime routines with one hand. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by both physical discomfort and emotional turmoil. Each time I drifted off, I saw Adrian's face as he twisted my finger, that moment of deliberate cruelty replaying on endless loop. Morning brought little relief. Simple tasks like buttoning my shirt or making coffee became complicated challenges. I was attempting to prepare toast when the phone rang again. This time it was Franklin Morris, my former colleague from the bank. "Carlton, sorry to call early, but I thought you should know. That loan you asked me about? Someone submitted an application with your signature as cosigner yesterday evening." My stomach dropped. "What? That's impossible. I never signed anything." "I thought as much," Franklin replied gravely. "When you described those loan terms, red flags went up. I contacted a friend in processing to keep an eye out. She called me last night when the application arrived. The signature doesn't look quite right, but it's close enough that it might have gone through if no one was watching for it. Can you email me a copy?" I asked, my mind racing. Minutes later, I was staring at a digital copy of the loan application. There at the bottom was a reasonable facsimile of my signature, but with subtle differences I could immediately identify. The starting stroke was too heavy, the terminal loop too tight. Someone had forged my signature, and not particularly well. "The bank won't process it now that I've raised concerns," Franklin assured me. But Carlton, you need to know that forgery on a loan application of this size is a serious offense. If you didn't sign this, my son, I said quietly, the full weight of the betrayal sinking in. My son must have signed it. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, the implications washing over me. The forgery wasn't spontaneous. Adrian must have planned to forge my signature all along. The visit yesterday, the confrontation, perhaps even my injury, was meant to prevent me from going to the bank and declaring the signature fraudulent. I walked slowly to my home office and surveyed it with new eyes. Had Adrian been in here recently? During their Sunday visit, he had excused himself to use the bathroom at one point, and been gone longer than seemed necessary. I began carefully examining my desk area, looking for signs of disturbance. In the third drawer down, beneath a stack of utilities bills, I found them. 3 sheets of paper with multiple attempts at copying my signature. The practice sheets were meticulously done, showing progressive improvement in mimicking my handwriting style. This wasn't impulsive. This was calculated, planned, deliberate. I sank into my office chair, the practice sheets trembling in my hand. My own son had come into my home with the intention of stealing my identity to secure a loan that could financially devastate me. When I refused to cooperate, he had resorted to physical violence and forgery. The pain in my broken finger was nothing compared to the shattering in my heart. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I sat in Margaret's favorite chair by the living room window, staring into the darkness of our front yard. I thought about Adrian as a child, his gap-toothed smile when I taught him to ride a bike, his proud expression when he made the honor roll in 6th grade. When had that boy become this man, who could hurt his father for financial gain? Had I contributed to this transformation through misguided generosity? By solving problems that he should have faced himself? By protecting him from consequences that might have taught important lessons? The questions circled through my mind, without clear answers. By morning, one thing had become crystal clear through the fog of pain, medication, and emotional turmoil. I could not allow this fraud to proceed, not just for my own protection, but perhaps, finally, for Adrian's as well. Real love sometimes meant allowing people to face the consequences of their actions. Perhaps that was a lesson I should have taught long ago. With my decision made, I called Franklin first thing Wednesday morning. I need to formally report a forgery attempt, I told him. Can you connect me with the right people at the bank? Franklin arranged a meeting for 10 o'clock with himself and Diane Perkins, the bank's fraud investigation specialist. I dressed carefully, struggling with buttons and shoelaces, and drove one-handed to the bank, where I'd spent most of my professional life. The main branch building still felt like a second home, though many faces were unfamiliar now. Franklin met me in the lobby, his expression concerned as he glanced at my splinted finger. "Carlton, what happened to your hand?" "It's connected to what we're discussing today," I replied quietly. "I'll explain everything to you and Miss Perkins together." In the privacy of Franklin's office, I placed the loan documents, forged signature, and practice sheets on the desk. Then, haltingly at first but with increasing resolve, I told them the complete story, including Adrian's assault and the connection between my injury and the forgery attempt. Diane took detailed notes, her professional demeanor occasionally slipping to reveal shock or sympathy. Franklin simply looked devastated on my behalf. "Mr. Walker, what you're describing involves multiple potential crimes," Diane explained when I finished. "Forgery, fraud, and physical assault. Have you filed a police report about your injury?" I shook my head. "I haven't. He's still my son." Franklin and Diane exchanged glances. "We understand this is extremely difficult," Franklin said gently, "but we have clear evidence of attempted bank fraud. The bank has an obligation to address that, regardless of your decisions about the assault." "What happens now?" I asked. "The loan application is already flagged and will be officially denied," Diane explained. "We have options regarding the fraud attempt. We could immediately refer this to law enforcement, or we could begin with an administrative remedy." We discussed various approaches. I wanted consequences for Adrian but struggled with the idea of him facing criminal charges. Eventually, we developed a plan. The bank would cancel the loan application and require Adrian to come in person to receive the official notification. I would be present, along with Franklin and a bank security officer. We would confront Adrian with the evidence of forgery and give him the opportunity to withdraw all applications before the bank took more serious action. The goal is to stop this behavior and make it clear that it cannot continue, Franklin summarized, while giving him one opportunity to avoid the most severe consequences. I agreed, hoping this controlled confrontation might finally break through to the son I once knew. We scheduled the meeting for the following morning, giving the bank time to prepare all necessary documentation. As I drove home, my mind cleared by purpose rather than clouded by pain and confusion. I felt a strange combination of sorrow and resolve. This would change my relationship with Adrian forever, but perhaps that relationship needed changing. I was sorting through my mail that evening when Adrian's Tesla pulled into my driveway. My heart raced as he approached the front door. I hadn't expected to see him before tomorrow's meeting at the bank. He knocked lightly before using his key, calling out in an artificially cheerful voice, "Dad, you home?" I remained seated in the living room as he entered, his expression transforming to exaggerated concern when he saw my splinted finger. "Dad, how are you feeling? That must hurt like hell." He sat across from me, leaning forward with furrowed brow. "Did the doctor say how long it will take to heal?" 4 to 6 weeks, I replied neutrally. "What brings you by, Adrian?" "Just checking on you after your fall," he said, emphasizing the last word slightly. "You know, at your age, a bad fall can be the beginning of serious problems." I didn't fall. His expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. "That's what you told the doctors?" "Dad, being stubborn about accepting help is how seniors end up in care facilities. Nobody will think less of you for having an accident." The implied threat was unmistakable. If I contradicted his story about a fall, he would suggest I was becoming mentally incompetent, possibly in need of a guardian to make decisions for me. Likely himself. "The loan papers are with the bank," I said, changing the subject. His posture relaxed slightly. "Good. I'm glad you came around. This business is going to be amazing, Dad. You'll see." "I'm sure things will work out exactly as they should," I replied carefully. Adrian stayed for another 20 minutes, maintaining the facade of a concerned son, while dropping additional subtle references to seniors who can't manage alone and making difficult decisions for parents who won't accept reality. Each comment reinforced my conviction about tomorrow's confrontation. After he left, I immediately called my attorney, Barbara Levinson. Though semi-retired, she had handled my estate planning for decades and knew both me and Adrian well. "Barbara, I need to document some concerning interactions with Adrian," I explained, before recounting both the injury and tonight's veiled threats. "Carlton, this is deeply troubling," she said when I finished. "I'm going to prepare an affidavit documenting your current mental competence and these incidents. We should also discuss a protective order if things escalate further." We spoke for nearly an hour, creating a detailed record of recent events and establishing a legal framework to protect me from any attempt Adrian might make to challenge my autonomy. Barbara also recommended installing security cameras around my home, which I ordered for express delivery the next day. That night, I sat at my desk writing a letter I never thought I'd need to write to my only child. I documented my enduring love alongside my profound disappointment. I acknowledged my own failings as a parent while establishing clear boundaries for the future. Whether I would ever give him this letter, I wasn't certain, but the act of writing it helped clarify my thoughts. The letter forced me to confront difficult questions. Had I enabled Adrian's sense of entitlement by always providing financial safety nets? Had Margaret and I been so determined to give him a better childhood than our own that we failed to prepare him for adult responsibilities? Had my love been expressed too often through money rather than meaningful guidance? The answers were uncomfortable but necessary. Yes, I had made serious parenting mistakes. Yes, I had often chosen the path of least resistance rather than the harder road of allowing natural consequences. Yes, I had sometimes confused financial support with love. But none of those realizations justified Adrian's actions. Understanding my contribution to the situation didn't excuse his choices. Adults make their own decisions regardless of their upbringing. At 38 years old, Adrian was long past the point where his behavior could be attributed solely to parenting. By midnight, I had finished my letter and finalized plans with Franklin for the morning confrontation. Security cameras were scheduled for installation. Legal documentation was underway, and I had alerted my sister Rachel about the situation without sharing every detail. My broken finger throbbed despite medication, but my resolve remained firm. Tomorrow would be a turning point for Adrian, for me, and for our relationship, whatever remained of it. I arrived at the First National Bank 30 minutes before the scheduled meeting. My stomach churned with anxiety, but my determination remained steady. Franklin greeted me at a side entrance, escorting me to his office overlooking the main banking floor. "Everything's arranged," he assured me. "Loan officer Melissa Jenkins will meet with them first at her desk. After reviewing some preliminary information, she'll bring them to conference room B, where we'll be waiting. Bank security has been briefed, and we'll have an officer positioned discreetly nearby." I nodded, taking the seat Franklin offered by the window. From this vantage point, I could observe the main entrance without being easily visible from below. Franklin provided coffee and reviewed our planned approach one more time. "Remember, our primary goal is to stop the fraud and establish clear consequences, not public humiliation," he reminded me. "If Adrian becomes disruptive, security will intervene." At precisely 10:30, a familiar black Tesla pulled into the customer parking area. Adrian emerged wearing a tailored navy suit, then circled to open the door for Sophia in her cream-colored business attire. They looked like success personified, confident, and polished as they strode toward the main entrance. "They're here," I said quietly. Franklin squeezed my shoulder. "Let's go to the conference room. They'll be brought up in a few minutes." Conference room B was elegant but intimidating, with its large mahogany table and executive chairs. Franklin positioned me at the far end, where I would be facing the door. He placed a folder containing the forged documents and practice sheets in front of himself, then signaled to Diane Perkins waiting in the hallway that we were ready. Through the glass wall, I watched Adrian and Sophia follow Melissa Jenkins toward the conference room. Adrian was smiling broadly, nodding at whatever Melissa was saying. Sophia was already on her phone, apparently texting about their successful loan acquisition. The door opened. Adrian entered first, his expression shifting from confidence to shock when he saw me. He recovered quickly, his face transforming into practiced concern. "Dad, what are you doing here? Should you be out with your injury? The doctor said you needed rest after that fall." Before I could respond, Franklin stood, professional and imposing in his executive suit. "Mr. Walker, Mrs. Walker, please have a seat. I'm Franklin Morris, Senior Loan Officer. We have some important matters to discuss regarding your application." Sophia looked confused but took a seat beside Adrian, who remained standing, eyes darting between me and Franklin. "There must be some mistake. We've already been preliminarily approved. We're just here for final processing. Please, sit down," Franklin repeated firmly. Adrian slowly lowered himself into a chair, maintaining his facade of confidence, though I could see tension building in his shoulders. "Is there a problem with some paperwork? We can clear up any issues right away." Franklin opened the folder, removing the loan application. "Yes, there is a significant problem with the paperwork. Specifically, with this signature." He pointed to my forged signature on the cosigner line. This signature was not provided by Carlton Walker. Adrian's face remained composed, but a subtle tic appeared at the corner of his left eye, a nervous habit I'd observed since his childhood. Of course it was. Dad signed it Tuesday. Franklin placed the practice signature sheets on the table. "We also have these, found in Mr. Walker's home office. They appear to be practice attempts at forging his signature." Sophia gasped, her head whipping toward Adrian. "What is he talking about? You told me your father had signed." Adrian's composure cracked slightly. "This is ridiculous. Dad, tell them you signed the papers." All eyes turned to me. I met my son's gaze directly. "I did not sign that document, Adrian. You know I refused. Then you broke my finger when I wouldn't cooperate. I raised my splinted hand. And then you forged my signature anyway." The conference room fell silent. Sophia stared at Adrian, her expression transforming from confusion to horror. "You broke your father's finger? You told me he fell in the bathroom." Adrian's face flushed red. "This is a misunderstanding. Dad's confused. At his age, memory issues are common." Franklin nodded to the door, where a uniformed security officer now stood. "Mr. Walker, we have two options here. First option, you immediately withdraw this fraudulent loan application and all associated documents. You provide written acknowledgement that you attempted to use a forged signature, and you agree never to attempt such fraud again. Second option, we refer this clear case of attempted bank fraud to law enforcement for criminal investigation." The security officer stepped into the room, positioning himself near Adrian. The implied threat was clear. Sophia stood abruptly, gathering her purse. "I had nothing to do with any forgery," she declared, her voice shaking. "I was told Carlton had willingly signed." She looked at me briefly, a mixture of embarrassment and anger in her eyes. "I would never have agreed to this." She leaned toward Adrian, whispering something I couldn't hear, then walked briskly from the room without looking back. The abandonment seemed to deflate Adrian instantly. His carefully constructed facade crumbled as he watched Sophia disappear down the hallway. For several moments, he sat in stunned silence. Then, like a dam breaking, emotions flooded his face. Anger, fear, desperation. "You've ruined everything," he shouted at me, half rising before the security officer stepped closer. "Do you have any idea what this cost us? The deposit? Sophia's planning? Our reputation?" I maintained my composure. "You did this, Adrian, not me. I tried to protect you from a bad financial decision. You responded with violence and fraud. I wouldn't have had to if you'd just helped us like a normal parent would. Do you know what this will do to our family name? To my marriage? I'm more concerned about what your actions have done to your integrity," I replied softly. "And our relationship." Franklin pushed a document across the table. "Your written acknowledgement of withdrawal and attempted fraud, Mr. Walker. Sign it now, or we contact the police." Adrian stared at the paper, his breathing rapid and shallow. The fight seemed to drain from him as reality set in. With a shaking hand, he signed the document, then pushed back from the table violently, his chair clattering against the wall. "Congratulations, Dad. You've destroyed my life to prove a point. I hope it was worth it." He stormed toward the door, the security officer following closely. "Adrian," I called after him, "this isn't about punishment. It's about consequences and truth." He paused at the threshold, turning back with a bitter laugh. "Save your wisdom for your financial literacy students. We're done." The security officer escorted Adrian through the bank and out of the building. Through the window, I watched my son's angry departure, his body language broadcasting rage and humiliation to anyone watching. Franklin sat beside me in the now quiet conference room. "I'm so sorry, Carlton. That was difficult to witness." "Necessary, though," I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Would you like me to drive you home?" I shook my head. "I need some time alone. Thank you for everything, Franklin." The drive home was surreal. Traffic flowed, pedestrians crossed streets, shopkeepers opened stores, all continuing their normal routines, while my world had fundamentally changed. I felt simultaneously hollowed out and unburdened, grieving yet relieved. That evening, as I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, my phone rang. Sophia's name appeared on the screen, surprising me enough that I answered. "Carlton?" Her voice sounded strained. "I need you to know I had no idea about any of this. The forgery, your injury, all of it. Adrian told me you had signed willingly. I believe you, Sophia. I've left him, she continued. I'm staying at my sister's. This isn't just about today. There have been other lies, other schemes I've discovered recently. I can't live like that. Her voice broke slightly. I also want to say I'm sorry about the boutique plan. It was unrealistic. I got carried away with the idea and ignored the financial realities. Your concerns were valid. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, processing the day's events. My finger throbbed painfully, a physical reminder of broken trust and relationships. Yet, beneath the pain, lay a curious sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in decades, I had acted with complete integrity, despite knowing the personal cost. The truth had been painful, but necessary. That night, sleep eluded me again, but not from anxiety or confusion. Instead, my mind processed the day's events with remarkable clarity. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. The relationship with my son was damaged, but perhaps more honest than it had ever been. The path forward was uncertain but no longer shrouded in manipulation and deceit. The weeks following the confrontation passed in unusual silence. My phone didn't ring with Adrian's voice. No text messages appeared with excuses or accusations. The complete severing of communication was painful, but also brought an unexpected sense of calm. The constant anxiety about his next financial crisis or manipulation had disappeared, replaced by a different, cleaner sort of pain. My finger began to heal, though the orthopedic specialist warned it would likely remain slightly crooked permanently. The bone has started to knit, she explained during my follow-up appointment. But the alignment isn't perfect. At your age, we prioritize function over appearance. Each twinge and ache served as a physical reminder of that pivotal moment when my son chose violence over respect. Yet as the weeks passed, I found myself focusing less on the injury itself and more on my response to it. I had finally stood firm rather than capitulating to avoid conflict. Support came from unexpected places. My sister Rachel began calling daily and visiting weekly, bringing homemade meals and genuine companionship. I've missed you, Carlton, she admitted during one visit. I always felt like I was competing with Adrian for your attention. Former colleagues organized a weekly lunch group that got me out of the house regularly. My neighbor Dave invited me to join his community garden project, giving me a purposeful outdoor activity that accommodated my healing hand. Through Rachel, I learned that Adrian had told various family members that I was mentally declining and making up stories about him. Few believed these accusations, having known me too long and too well. Those who expressed concerns were invited to visit me, where my clarity and coherence quickly dispelled any doubts. At Rachel's suggestion, I joined a support group for parents estranged from adult children. The first meeting was profoundly uncomfortable, sitting in a church basement with 8 strangers united only by a particular form of heartbreak. By the third meeting, however, I found myself sharing details I'd never spoken aloud before. The hardest part, I told the group, is reconciling the child you raised with the adult they've become. In my mind, Adrian is still partly that little boy who needed my protection and guidance. Accepting that he's fully responsible for his own choices feels like letting go of that child forever. Heads nodded around the circle. One woman replied, "Loving them doesn't mean saving them from consequences. Sometimes it means letting them face those consequences so they can grow." "Even when it breaks your heart?" I asked. "Especially then," she answered simply. 3 months after the confrontation at the bank, my finger had healed enough to resume most normal activities, though it remained noticeably crooked. The physical therapist declared our sessions complete, though she recommended continuing the exercises at home. "You've made excellent progress, Mr. Walker," she said during our final session. "Most patients your age don't regain this much flexibility after a fracture." "I'm motivated," I replied. "Every bit of function I recover feels like a small victory." That evening, checking my rarely used personal email account, I discovered a message from Adrian. My heart raced as I opened it. "Dad, I'd like to meet and talk. Coffee at Riverside Cafe, Saturday at 10? Just the two of us. Adrian." No apology, no explanation. just a simple request. I considered ignoring it, protecting myself from further pain. After consulting with my support group and Barbara, my attorney, I finally responded with agreement to meet in the public location. Saturday morning arrived with perfect autumn crispness. I arrived at the cafe early, selecting a table with clear sightlines to both exits, a security habit Barbara had recommended. At precisely 10 o'clock, Adrian walked in. I barely recognized him at first. He had lost weight, his designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. The polished confidence was gone, his posture showing unfamiliar humility as he approached. "Dad," he nodded, taking the seat across from me. "Thank you for coming." "You're welcome," I replied neutrally, waiting for him to continue. Adrian ordered black coffee, another change from his usual complicated espresso concoction. After the server departed, he cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sophia left me," he stated flatly. "Filed for divorce last month. I'm sorry to hear that." And surprisingly, I meant it. He shrugged. "It was inevitable after everything. The boutique investors pulled out when the bank loan fell through. We lost the deposit on the retail space. Then creditors started calling about other debts I'd been hiding from her." He paused, staring into his coffee. "I'm filing for bankruptcy next week." I sat silently, resisting the lifelong urge to offer solutions or financial assistance. "I've been seeing a therapist," Adrian continued, "part of a credit counseling program. She's helping me understand some patterns." He glanced at my hand, still bearing the slight deformity from the break. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I don't expect you to forgive me. Are you asking for forgiveness?" He looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "I don't think I have that right yet. I'm still trying to understand why I did it, why I thought hurting you was acceptable." He took a shaky breath. "The therapist says, I've spent my life expecting financial rescue without consequences, that I never developed normal adult coping skills because there was always a bailout available." The self-awareness surprised me. "That sounds accurate. I know now that you were trying to help when you refused to sign, that the business would have failed and left us both in financial ruin." He shook his head. "I couldn't see it then. I just saw an obstacle to what I wanted." We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering painful ground. Adrian took responsibility for the injury and forgery without excuses, though he explained the desperate financial situation that had driven his actions. He had lost nearly everything: wife, home, credit, and self-respect. When he tentatively asked about rebuilding our relationship, I was direct about my boundaries. "I will always be your father, and I will always love you," I told him. "But our relationship can never again include financial entanglement. No loans, no gifts, no bailouts." "I understand," he nodded. "I don't want your money. I just want a chance to be your son again. The right way this time." As we prepared to leave, Adrian asked awkwardly if we could meet again the following week. I agreed, though with cautious optimism rather than naive hope. The road ahead would be long and uncertain. Over the following months, our relationship slowly rebuilt on new foundations. Adrian found a job at a small marketing firm, lived in a modest apartment, and continued therapy. Our weekly coffee meetings became a stable ritual, sometimes comfortable, sometimes challenging, but always honest. My crooked finger remained a visible reminder of our lowest point. Occasionally, I would catch Adrian looking at it, his expression flickering with shame. During one such moment, 6 months after our first cafe meeting, I finally addressed it directly. "It healed crooked," I said, flexing the finger to show its limited range, "but it still works. It's different now, but functional." Maybe that's a fitting metaphor for our relationship. Adrian looked up, surprise and cautious hope in his eyes. "Different but functional sounds better than I deserve." "It's not about deserving," I replied, understanding this truth more deeply than ever before. "It's about growing, healing, and moving forward with greater wisdom." My broken finger taught me that sometimes love means standing firm even when it hurts. that boundaries aren't walls but foundations for healthier relationships, that it's never too late to change patterns, even decades in the making. Most importantly, I learned that true parental love sometimes requires the courage to allow natural consequences, even when those consequences are painful for everyone involved. The hand of protection must eventually open, allowing adult children to experience the full weight of their choices. The crooked finger on my right hand will never straighten completely. Similarly, my relationship with Adrian will always bear the marks of our painful history. But both have found a new way to function with greater awareness and respect for their limitations. What was broken has healed differently, but perhaps stronger in the places where it was tested most severely. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? Did you struggle with the difference between helping and enabling? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more life lessons from my 70 years of living. Sometimes our most painful experiences yield the most valuable wisdom. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, it's never too late to heal what's been broken, even if it heals differently than before.